In the handouts that you've all got, there's a photo of me hopping slightly madly like this. The reason I'm hopping like that is because I was standing on a street which had spray painted across it the enormous word hopping zone. I sent the photo with hopping zone. It was cropped to exclude the hopping zone and printed to make me look slightly mad, but I promise the words were there. Okay, now what hide and seek does. So we make games that have a live component or are entirely live. Sometimes there's an online or tech component, sometimes there isn't. They generally take place in public space, so in parks, in arts venues, around streets and cities, across fields. They're often at the intersection of games plus some other sort of cultural forms. So there's games plus theatre, or games plus visual arts, games plus music, games plus guided tour, games plus anything interesting that you can add games to, really. And we have a yearly festival which happens in the South Bank Centre. We make and design games for private clients, and we also have a monthly event called the Sandpit, which runs at a lot of different venues. We're at the South Bank Centre next week on the Wednesday, so come along if you like, where we try out new sorts of pervasive games, which is the term that gets used for this sort of social live game. Probably it's still not exactly clear what these games are like. Generally, the best way to do this is give an example of a few different games. So I'm going to talk quickly through a few of the games that we have made or run, and hopefully that will make it all a bit clearer. So there's a game called Journey to the End of the Night, which isn't one we designed. It's from a group called SF0 in America, and the game itself is about 5 years old now. And it's really, really, really great. But at the same time, it's very, very silly. It's essentially sort of British Bulldog or a chase across, or a schoolyard chase played really, really big. It was the first pervasive game I ever played in the 2007 Hide and Seek Festival before I was involved in this. And we started off outside an abandoned factory in Wapping or somewhere. 100 of us turned up and were given a white and red ribbon, which got tied around our arms. And we signed a disclaimer, and we were given a map with 5 checkpoints on it. We were told we had to get to each of these checkpoints in order, and there'd be an actor there, or there'd be someone there who would sign our piece of paper and send us on to the next one. They were way, way across the map. You know, there was some in Hyde Park, there was one in Waterloo, actually on the riverbank, so you could only get there when it was low tide. And so it's sort of way, way across London. We had just had to get to these in order. But standing all around us, there was 10 or 12 really ominous-looking people with hats and red ribbons. And then some doors opened, and there were a few more of them, including one on those great big springy stilts. And he pelted out of the gates by these abandoned factories. And we were told that these were the chasers, and they would be out to get us. And if at any point during the night they tagged us, we would become one of them. They'd take away our ribbon, they'd give us a red ribbon, and we would turn against the friends we had been helping a moment ago. We would try to convert them as well to the side of the chasers. So it took 4 or 5 hours to play. I got almost to the last checkpoint, and then I got caught. I'd foolishly been running errands all day and hadn't sat down since noon, not realising what I was in for. One of my co-team members got turned into a chaser as well, and met our final surviving team member at the final checkpoint, and chased him full pelt for 5 minutes before he finally managed to get to the final checkpoint and win. It was really, really delightful and astonishing, and was the game that made me want to try to do this. And like I said, it's from a group called SF0, and they do occasionally run in different places. There was one in Lancaster up last week, so if you get the chance to play it, I heartily recommend it. There's another game that I'm going to talk about briefly called Checkpoint from a theatre maker called Andy Field, which is a game that Hide and Seek helped develop through the Sandpit, which is the monthly events. I curate those, that's mostly my role within Hide and Seek. I also design some games. And so Checkpoint is a game of border guards and smugglers. So in one space, we played it at the South Bank Centre, so on the top floor of Royal Festival Hall, there was an installation of a living room. There was a rug and a chair and a plate of baked beans and an aquarium and an alarm clock and some helium balloons, and someone passed out on the sofa. And this big living room-like installation. And the players had to disassemble it, carrying only one thing each at a time, and reassemble it down on the bottom floor of Royal Festival Hall, with the catch that in between there was a zone patrolled by border guards, who were portrayed by actors, who all had sort of hats and glasses, and if they saw you moving around and thought you were a smuggler, they'd come up and talk to you and engage you in conversation. And if eventually they were convinced that you were carrying something, they would issue a formal accusation. If they were right, you had to give up whatever you were carrying. If you got caught several times, you'd get kicked out of the game for 5 minutes. If they made too many false accusations, they'd get kicked out of the game, into prison, with the smugglers that they'd previously been persecuting, which was fun. But, and you know, the smugglers had to get 2/3 of the stuff through. And we've played this game maybe 5 times now, and by the second or third time you played it, people had developed this sort of slang and tactics and this mythology of the game. My very favourite bit of it is this thing that people invented at the very first running of it called a chair rush, which is when there's a chair in the installation and you have to get it through. And it's really hard to smuggle because, you know, it's a chair. So you do this during the end of the game when the border guards are going to recognise everyone as a smuggler, so there's no need to maintain secrecy. You choose one person who picks up the chair, and then every other player gets a different chair from somewhere else in the venue. And you all carry these chairs simultaneously right past the border guards who know that one of them is something that they're desperately trying to catch, but they have no idea which. And so there's just these delightful things that people invent. The final game I'm going to talk about briefly is a game called The Last Will, which was something that Hide and Seek produced with Punch Drunk, who's a theatre company. Last year, I wasn't personally involved in this one, but it was a prototype for a game idea, and the premise of it was that there was a room, and so this room was built with a small set of rooms interconnecting with puzzles in it, and there was also a virtual recreation of that space, and it was set up so that, for example, people playing the virtual version could open doors and close doors, and the doors would open and close in the real world. There were some ways to communicate between the two spaces, you know, the video camera webcams that would show some spaces of the real indoors thing, and you get limited sort of typing and voice access across it. And the two players working in concert, one in the real space, one in the virtual space, had to cooperate in order to solve a series of puzzles. And, you know, this half-hour experience that takes simultaneously. So there's quite a big range of types of stuff, from, you know, very simple rules, running things, to more theatrical stuff, to things with elements of technology. But something that they have in common with the sort of Facebook games that you're here to hear about, that is a sentence that makes sense, is that they do tend to take place in social contexts. And so what I'm going to do now, just let me check what I'm going to do now, is to talk about a few of the game design principles and problems that come up in pervasive games that seem like they would be transferable across social spaces in general. So one of the things that happens with games, with any games really, is people don't want to play. And one of the ways that we beguile people into them is, you know, elements of spectacle. So we've got a game called the Soho Stag Hunt, where there's a guy and a stag. This came about because this came about because we promised that there would be a live stag hunt at the end of a sort of a week-long mini alternate reality game. At that time, we had no idea what the stag hunt would be. I don't really remember or understand why we promised that there would be one, let alone why there would be a live one. I just remember spending 4 hours sitting in a Soho pub saying, but we promised a stag hunt, we need to design a stag hunt. And me saying repeatedly, I bet we should use balloons. Balloons are a sort of an all-purpose solution to game design problems, in my view. So eventually we came up with this game where there's a guy in a very nice suit and a giant papier-mâché stag's head with these huge antlers wandering through Soho. And the players are teams with different colours, and each team has a collection of balloons. They have to take one balloon each at a time, rush out in groups of 3, try to stop the stag by, okay, there's in-game reasons for this, but by hypnotising him with 3 balloons at once, trust me, it made sense in context. Then he would stop, they would tie the balloons on, then go back and get more balloons. So at the end of the game, obviously, the team that's managed to tie the most balloons on, the balloons that are most abundantly coloured, is the winner. But what this means in practice is that you get an expanding, huge balloon bundle wandering through Soho on the head of a man pretending to be a stag. which is great, and people want to join in immediately. And they can do, because you can just hand them the balloons and they'll come along and do it. And it's, they see something, it's fun, and they can do it straight away.